you can see?
Yes, doctor. Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes, doctor.
So I have put into a slideshow. So today, so I think you have completed the epithelium, you have completed connective tissue, bone, joints, and muscle tissue. Am I correct? Okay. So today I'm just going to give an introduction to the nervous system. Most of the points in this topic is well known to you all because you have finished your A levels and you've also finished your SPM or matriculation or foundation. So this is all is being used, is all being taught to you already. But we are going more towards medical subjects and how this is being used in medicine. So nervous system is one of the most important control systems of our body. So this is very, very important for us to know how it controls our body, how it helps to carry out certain activities in the body, and how it responds to stimuli as well. So the learning outcomes of this session is the students will be able to describe the parts or the types of nervous system and their function, describe the gross features of a cross section of the spinal cord. Then you would be able to describe a typical spinal nerve and the reflex arc with the help of a diagram. And you will also be expected to explain the terms myotomes, dermatomes, reflex arc, and referred pain. So are the learning outcomes clear to you?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So if you cannot understand in any part of my lecture, please stop and just ask me to explain this. So it would be, so otherwise you will lead to many misconceptions. So please wait, just stop me and say, doctor, can you explain it again? So I will explain it for you. So the most important control system of our body is our nervous system. Another system which controls this is the endocrine system. So the endocrine system, what are the glands you will find in the endocrine system? Any examples of glands of the endocrine system? Any examples of glands of the endocrine system? I know this class is like online. Yeah, sorry.
Pituitary gland.
Yeah, very good. Pituitary. Any other glands? I would expect some kind of interaction from you all as well. Huh? It's very boring. As much as it's boring for you to look into the screen, it's very boring for me to talk into the screen. So I would be asking some questions now and here to at least make yourselves orient to the class.
Thyroid.
Yes, thyroid.
Adrenal glands.
Yes, adrenal. Yeah. So thanks for the example. So what is the difference between endocrine and exocrine glands?
Exocrine, it has a duct to secrete the hormone.
Okay, very good. Is it a hormone or a secretion?
I don't
For
know.
exocrine, always we call it as secretion. For endocrine, yes, very good. For endocrine, we always call it as a hormone, and it directly, we secrete into the bloodstream. So, which acts faster? Is it exocrine secretion or an endocrine hormone?
Exocrine secretion.
Is it acting faster or the endocrine?
Exocrine secretion acts faster.
No, endocrine hormones acts faster because it is directly poured into the bloodstream. Number one. Number two, the exocrine secretions is a lot. Like for example, when you take the saliva, you see how much saliva, or when you take the sweat, so much of sweat and saliva, you can see the copious amount. Whereas endocrine secretions, when we measure the growth hormone levels or thyroid hormone levels, we go for microliters only. Very minimal amount of hormones only is usually present. So the less quantity, fast action is your endocrine. More quantity, slower action is your exocrine. Clear? So if I say very fast action, so the endocrine and the nervous system have got very fast action because they have to control all the activities within the human body. That's why we always put them together. So how does it do this function? So it communicates the messages between brain and the body very quickly using nerve impulses. Like for example, if I place my finger in the fire, it will, the thing is the pain impulses are transmitted to the nerve, goes to the spinal cord, then goes to the brain, then the brain will tell back my spinal cord to take my hand away from the fire. But it all happens in a microsecond. Before even the moment I touch the heat, I immediately take off my finger. But but this whole reflex arc takes place there. So this tells you how fast the communication is there between the body, and the impulses are sent to the brain, and then brain instructs back again to the body to do an action. So it is very fast. So what are the specific functions of a nervous system? It enables the body to react with the changes in the external and internal environment. So external environment is basically what I say is, yeah, I'm touching the fire, or it is very cold outside, so I need to close myself up, wear an extra layer of clothing. So any changes within the external environment, I react. So that is the changes of the external environment. Internal environment, any example do you know of? Changes in the internal environment.
Like for example, blood pressure, body temperature, is it like that?
Yeah, very good.
Sugar levels.
Yeah, so sugar levels, okay, yeah. So here when you have a low blood pressure, consider the patient has a low blood pressure. So the first thing which suffers when we have a low blood pressure is the brain. So usually we have receptors in the carotid artery which goes to the brain to detect the low blood pressure. So that will instruct the heart to beat faster. That will go and give its impulse to the brain. The brain will instruct the heart to beat faster, as well as to increase the force of contraction to increase the blood pressure. So any changes with the internal and external environment is the body reacts by the help of the nervous system. So the most of the involuntary actions of the body, like circulation and respiration. So I am talking now, but I'm still breathing and my heart is still beating. So the meaning is that I am doing these activities even without my own knowledge or my will. So this control and integration is brought by the nervous system. It programs spinal cord reflexes, which are quite fast to react. It helps in memory and learning, as well as voluntary control of body movements. So when I say point number 2, involuntary action is also brought by the nervous system. Point number 5, voluntary control of body movements, like I want to pick up a phone, I want to take a cup of water. All these things are also brought by the nervous system. Am I clear until now?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so now let's see how we divide the nervous system. So first, our learning point is to find out the types or the different parts of the nervous system. We have central and peripheral nervous system. The brain and the spinal cord is the parts of the central nervous system. So this will give rise to two different types of nerves. The nerves that come out from the brain are called as cranial nerves, and the nerves that come out from the spinal cord are called as spinal nerves. So these two types of nerves form the part of the peripheral nervous system. So the brain is the control center. The spinal cord also has a control center. We call it as integrative because it integrates your sensory information as well as your motor output. So if I am I am planning to study something, so I would be by sensory, my understanding as well as my vision, everything, it will be looking into my book. So that's the sensory information I get. It will be integrated into my brain and it will instruct my other centers to study it or memorize it. So the brain and spinal cord are very important integrative and control centers. How does it do the function? Through two types of nerves, cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves come from the brain and go to the brain. Spinal nerves come from the spinal cord and go to the spinal cord. So they are the communication points. So how does it do that? By two things. One is sensory or afferent, motor or efferent. So again, I told you when I touch fire, the sensory nervous system will automatically go and give my sensations to the spinal cord through the spinal nerves. The spinal nerves will actually go up and then it will tell via the impulses will go to the brain. The brain will instruct through the spinal cord again and spinal nerves and some cranial nerves to remove my hand away from the fire. So cranial nerves and spinal nerves are the communication. So whatever travels the sensations from my body to the center, we call it as sensory or efferent, and whatever orders that come from the brain and spinal cord to my body is called as motor or efferent division. So this is how the integration is there. Apart from this, we have two other things we have. The other one is autonomic nervous system. So when the body tells, okay, you put it hand into the fire and then you're going to remove it. So the removing part is the somatic nervous system. The term somatic means body wall. So this is a voluntary nervous system. The other one is the autonomic nervous system, which is involuntary. So the moment I have an injury, I have pain, my heart beats automatically and I start hyperventilating in the pain. So the heart beating, the hyperventilating in pain, everything is involuntary. It is irrespective of what is happening to me. So that is through my autonomic nervous system. In autonomic nervous system, I have two things. One we call it as sympathetic, the other one is called as parasympathetic. So there is a good balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic system. When I'm sitting happily taking a lecture, I'm not worried about anything. Oh, my parasympathetic is high. The moment I see an insect walking towards me, or I'm very hot and I'm not unable to sit, very different conditional things, and I want to get away from my place or move around, then automatically my sympathetic system takes over. So this one, again, I can give an example of, okay, seeing something, seeing a snake. So the moment we see a snake, we see it through our cranial nerve 2, which is my optic nerve. So when I see it through my cranial nerve 2, it is sending to impulses to the spinal cord as well as to the brain. So the brain will instruct back the cranial nerves and spinal nerves to tell, run away from that place. So it will go send it via the motor or the efferent division. So the motor or efferent division will tell my somatic nervous system, my body, to say, run away from that place. It will also instruct my autonomic nervous system to say, increase the heartbeat, dilate your pupils, start sweating. So this and all I'm not doing. Increasing heart rate, dilating my pupils and sweating, I'm not doing it. It is automatically being happening because it is an instruction from the autonomic nervous system. Am I clear?
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
Okay, yeah?
Yes,
So
yes,
this is what is explained into this in this I'm sorry. So here the black line I put here because what do you mean by viscera? I said somatic means body wall. What does the word viscera mean to you?
Internal.
Internal. Viscera means hollow organs or body organs. So anything pertaining to the body wall, your muscles, you move and all those things pertaining to the somatic nervous system. Anything to do with smooth muscle and cardiac muscle, for example, the organs like the heart, the lung, the abdominal organs, the kidney, the uterus or bladder, everything is called as the viscera. So from the somatic nervous system, the pain fibers are traveling through the sensory or the efferent division to the spinal cord. Whereas from the viscera, from the internal organs, the pain fibers are carried by the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. They are not supplied by the somatic nervous system. So that's why a pain from the body wall involving the external, so a cut, if somebody receives a cut on the hand, the pain is horrendous and it is a lot. But if somebody has a gastritis pain in the stomach, it is a dull, aching, gnawing kind of pain. It is there always, but it's very dull. It is unlikely something stabs. If somebody stabs, it's a different pain. Whereas if there is a pain inside the viscera or the organ, it is dull, aching pain. The reason is from the body wall, it is carried by somatic nerves, and from the viscera, it is carried by the autonomic nerves. So that's what the reason of it. Okay, can I move on? So now here I am just going to the parts of the brain. We have talked about the central nervous system. The parts of the brain is two cerebral hemispheres. So they have, in this figure, there is only one cerebral hemisphere, one half is there. If you could see the blue stars there, so that is the cerebral hemispheres. So that the human being's cerebral hemisphere is very well developed because it is a very higher center and it has got many depressions and elevations because it accommodates a lot of neurons. Then going to the second part of the brain is the brain stem. So the brain stem here I have shown by the red line. So the red line which is above the first part is actually the midbrain, and then it takes a deviation of a curve like that. So that is called as the pons, and then again a straight line is there, that is the medulla. Apart from that, we also have a cerebellum, which is very important for our balance and functions like that. So that is indicated by the green triangle here. So for you, this level is enough if you know the parts of the brain, because in year 2, we will talk a lot about neuroanatomy. So that's when you talk more about all this. Am I clear so far?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor. Yes.
Okay. So now coming to neuron, I think this you should be knowing already, because whenever I'm in class, if it's a face-to-face, I ask somebody to come and draw a neuron, they will definitely draw. So the neuron is the structural and functional cellular unit of the nervous system. So if I'm going to dissect a part of a brain, I am going to put it and stain it and put it under the microscope, I am going to see a neuron. So this neuron has a cell body. So the cell body in this figure is seen in the blue round structures. So that is the cell body. And it also has axons and dendrites. So dendrites are the smaller branched things that looks like a horn of a reindeer which is in a box. So this receives the information from the other neurons or from the other cell body structure, and it transmits the information via the axon, which is seen in a red line here. So this is the characteristic appearance of a neuron. So we have a cell body. Cell body is the main functional or trophic unit of the whole neuron, meaning it is the one which provides the nourishment, the nutrition, integration of impulses. So all the function is on the cell body. If a cell body dies, the neuron will die. So the cell body is very, very essential. Cell bodies receives information via dendrites and transmit information via the axons. So most of the cell bodies are located in the brain and spinal cord only. If you see all the whitish structures, the nerves, it is nothing but collection of axons. Okay, so that's why if there is a peripheral nerve injury, and if the patient has enough myelin sheath and all, the nerves can grow back, regeneration is possible. But injury to the brain and spinal cord, imagine a case of stroke, when the patient loses blood supply to the brain, there is death of neurons. It is very difficult to bring back the person from a hemiplegia because the cell bodies have died. So always remember, if the cell body dies, the neuron very difficult to regenerate. So now we come to the peripheral nervous system, which is nothing but your afferent and your motor and efferent. So structures include cranial nerves and spinal nerves. How many cranial nerves do you have?
12.
Yeah, we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Good. So this function of the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves is to basically communicate the information between the rest of the body and the central nervous system, where the orders are given to. So the first part is somatic nervous system. So somatic nervous system contains nerves that end in the skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscles are the muscles which are voluntary or involuntary.
Voluntary.
They are voluntary. So when you see them under a microscope, how do they appear? How does the fibers appear? Sorry, how do the fibers appear?
Elongated.
Very good. Elongated. Are they branched?
No.
They're not
No.
branched. How about the nuclei?
Ciliated.
On the periphery.
On the periphery, 1 or 2? How many?
Multinucleated.
Very good. Multinucleated. Okay. The most important feature is the.
Ciliated.
Sorry.
Ciliated.
Cross
It's called
striations.
as, yeah, striated. It is called as striated, or the presence of cross striations of actin and myosin. Why is it multinucleated? Any idea? So whenever you read something, please put the practice into asking why. When you ask why only, you will be able to learn more. Okay. So here this is, you will tell me tomorrow, not tomorrow, my class on Thursday again. So you will tell me why is it multinucleated. I will ask you. Okay. So now these nerves will conduct the impulses which control the skeletal muscle that comes from a directive from the brain to the spinal cord, or only the spinal cord. So this action is called as voluntary action. So this has two divisions, sensory or the efferent division. So it contains nerves that comes from the viscera or the internal organs, and the somatic areas like the muscle, ligaments, ears, eyes, skin, all these areas, and tendons. And this will go and give information to the spinal cord. The motor or the efferent division, it contains motor nerves. This will conduct the impulses from the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system to the muscles, organs, and glands. So whatever information is passing to my brain and spinal cord is through the sensory or efferent. Whatever order I get back from them to act is through the motor or the efferent division. Is it clear until now?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think this is all known to you all because you did your foundation. So here it's a cross section of your spinal cord. So the central purple region, which is in the shape of a H, what does it tell you? What is it?
What do you mean, doctor?
The central H-shaped purple color structure, what is it?
Gray matter.
Okay, gray matter, and the peripheral area is called as white matter. So what do you mean by gray matter and what do you mean by white matter?
The gray matter has a lot of cell bodies.
Okay, and why does it appear gray?
Because the cell bodies do not have myelin sheath, which is white.
Yes, very good. So the myelin sheath gives the whitish color to these neurons. So if the cell bodies, the accumulation of cell bodies is present, they are not myelinated, and so they will have a gray matter when you see under the microscope. Whereas or if you see with the naked eye as well. Whereas the axons or the dendrites, which usually they fan out from the cell body, they are usually myelinated, and then they will be usually producing the whitish appearance in the gross when you see under a naked eye or when you see under a microscope. So this image is actually a cross section of a spinal cord. We have a spinal nerve coming out from the spinal cord. A spinal nerve has got two components. It has got both the sensory as well as the motor components. So imagine a person is again receiving somebody is plucking a rose from the plant. So he's been pricked by a thorn. Immediately the impulses are carried by the blue color part of the spinal nerve. So this blue color part is actually the dorsal root. Dorsal means, what do you mean by dorsal and what is ventral? What does mean by dorsal? What is ventral?
Dorsal is posterior
Okay.
and ventral is anterior.
Yeah, yes. So this is carried by the posterior part of the spinal nerve and enters the posterior part of the spinal cord. So we call it as dorsal root. Ganglion, I will talk about it later in my next class, so you will know what a ganglion is. Huh? So once it enters the spinal cord, can you see a black line there? So that black line there indicates the interneuron. Interneurons usually connect the dorsal part of the spinal cord with the ventral part of the spinal cord, or the posterior and the anterior parts of the spinal cord. So that's where the integration takes place. So when the integration takes place, the motor or the efferent system is carried, or the orders are carried by the red color motor fibers back into the same spinal nerve, and then the person removes the hand away from the thorn. So this is called as a spinal arc or a reflex arc. So the sensations are carried by the blue color sensory nerve. Interneurons are black in color, which connect the dorsal and the ventral roots, and then you have a red color motor nerve which gives the order to remove the hand away from the stimulus. From the black color line which is there, you see another black color line going up? Can you see that?
Yeah.
So what does that indicate? So I have just completed a reflex arc over here. So for very fast actions, this reflex arc is enough. But for something else, for talking about the temperature, the touch pain impulses, everything will be sent up higher up towards the brain. So that's what it meant by that black line. So if I want a fast impulse, the function is finished in the spinal cord itself. That is why I call it as a reflex arc. Immediately you remove the hand. Whereas for more higher functions, all this is sent to the brain, to the higher centers. That's what the black line explains. Can I move forward? Can I?
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So the spinal cord can sometimes give orders by itself without consulting the brain, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
For immediate actions, your reflex arc is enough.
So does that mean that it's autonomous nervous system?
It is not autonomic. Sorry, I didn't understand your question. It's not autonomic. Autonomic is irrespective of your control. Like for example, your cardiorespiratory functions, which is continuously going on, and their control is autonomic nervous system. Your stomach glands, the acid secretion in the glands and things from your stomach, your mucus secretion or secretion from your exocrine glands, everything is autonomic.
Okay.
Okay, that we don't control at all. This is under our control. We are the one who remove the hand. Even if the brain instructs us to remove the hand, we have the choice to actually keep it there itself. It's voluntary. Okay. So coming to the spinal nerves, so we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So that's what I meant. A spinal nerve is a mixed nerve which usually carries motor, sensory, and sometimes they also carry autonomic signals. Where in which part it carries the autonomic signals, I will teach further. Okay. So though the spinal nerve has all these three components, it is different. Like for example, if somebody is in a class, we have not in a class, how to say, okay, we have one thick cord of thread. We have a red color thread, we have a green color thread, we have yellow color thread. All three together, we make it like a plait. You know what's a plait? Like how you plait your hair. So we have three cords, we plait it. It is one spinal nerve, but all three are different in their function. Though they travel in the same nerve, they are different in function. They don't exchange, like you carry motor, you do spine sensory, they don't exchange their functions. They have their specific functions within one particular nerve. Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Clear?
Yes.
So we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So 8 for the cervical region. So we have 8 cervical nerves, 12 thoracic nerves, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral and 1 coccygeal. So these spinal nerves are usually coming out from the spinal cord, which is also a part of your peripheral nervous system. So this is actually the figure that tells you C1 to C8 is your cervical nerves, T1 to T12 is your thoracic, lumbar is L1 to L5, S1 to S5 is the sacral and the 1 coccygeal nerve. So this specifically go to the body wall of certain. So cervical means, what do you mean by cervical? What does the term cervical mean to you? You are learning a lot of terminologies. Anatomy is a lot of words and terminologies actually. So what do you mean by cervical?
The
Something
neck
to do with
area.
the head, neck area.
Okay, the head we call it as cranial, the neck we call it as cervical. Okay, so this cervical part not only supplies the neck area, but it also gives rise to the arm area, the nerves that go to the arm, the forearm and the hand. So this we also call it as brachial. So cervical nerves, they supply the cervical and the brachial area. Brachial means arm. Then we have the thoracic. Thorax means the, which area of the body is called as thorax?
Chest area.
Yeah, the chest area is called as the thorax. So the body wall in the thorax is always innervated by the thoracic nerves. The lumbar area is actually the abdominal area. Front and back is called as lumbar. The pelvis and the area is innervated by the sacral and the coccygeal nerves. So it's not necessary for you to understand what is cervical, brachial, lumbosacral, nothing. All the nerves and all. I'm just giving you only cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal. These are the terms you're supposed to know at this level. It's enough if you know that. Once we go into systemic anatomy, each one we will be explaining at that level, okay? So somebody mentioned to me that anterior, or is otherwise called as ventral rami of the spinal, ventral means anterior. So when a spinal nerve is formed by the anterior and posterior division, again it divides into two branches, anterior branch and a posterior branch. The posterior branch will receive sensation from the back. So now when we look at a human body, where do we have more muscles on the body wall? Is it on the anterior or in the front, or is it on the posterior or behind? The back.
In the back.
Back you have more muscles or in front? The limbs are considered as front. Limbs. The upper limb and lower limb also considered as front.
And run, right?
Yeah, so the anterior or ventral part of the body has more muscles to innervate. So always the anterior branch of a spinal nerve will take part in a formation of a plexus. Okay, so plexus means is combination of spinal nerves, not one single spinal nerve. For example, cervical plexus. Cervical means you have the combination of C1 to C5 to go and or innervate or to go and take sensation from the neck area. Then nerves from C5 to T1, the anterior division, they will combine together. They will go to the arm of the patient, of the person, and take sensation or give instructions to the muscles there. For the lower limb, we have lumbar plexus and sacral plexus. So for the upper part of the body, mostly cervical and brachial. For the lower part of the body, it is lumbar and sacral. The thoracic is for your whole body wall. So since the thoracic is actually taking only from the from the rib cage and the abdominal muscles, the thoracic need not form a plexus because it has to travel separately. Imagine the arm is just one area. So it is nicer if you have a combination of nerves from C5 to T1, and in one whole bundle it travels to the arm. So that's why they form plexuses. Am I clear? Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so again, I wouldn't expect you to look at and read all the nerves, the superior gluteal, iliohypogastric. It is enough for you if you understand why you form plexus. Number one, only the anterior branch of spinal nerve will form plexus. Number two, we form plexuses because we want one whole bundle of nerve fibers to go to a particular area. That is why we form plexuses. That's the outcome, or that's the information. You should have it in your mind right now. Okay. This is again the same reflex arc which I explained to you. So now if you see, we have one spinal nerve which carries sensory fibers, motor fibers, and sometimes autonomic fibers. So the receptors will receive the pain or temperature or touch sensation, pass through the sensory neuron, go to the spinal cord, communicate via the interneuron, send impulses via the motor nerve fibers, and it goes to the effector or the muscle to act. So this is called as a reflex arc. So this image is otherwise called as the reflex arc. Clear? Is it clear?
Clear, doctor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any doubts so far? So let me continue on. Okay. So what do you mean by the term dermatome? And what do you mean by the term myotome?
Dermatome is the part of
means
this
skin.
refers to a patch of the skin that is innervated by a specific nerve, and
Okay.
myotome is like muscles, a specific muscle that is
Yeah.
innervated by a nerve.
Okay. So when a spinal nerve innervates, so dermatome is the single area of a skin which receives innervation from a spinal nerve. Yeah. Derma means skin. That's why we call dermatologists. Myo means muscle. It is also a part of a skeletal muscle. Remember, it's a skeletal muscle, not smooth muscle, which receives innervation from a single spinal nerve. Why is it important to know about a dermatome and myotome in anatomy? Any idea? Like for example, if somebody is giving me an injection in my arm, usually we give an injection in the arm, right, in the upper part of the arm. If somebody is giving me an injection and then I can feel the pain, what does it tell about the dermatome and the myotome there?
The injection is hitting a dermatome nearby
Yeah,
something.
and I can feel it. So meaning it explains the integrity of the dermatome and myotome. Meaning, so that area is actually innervated from nerve that comes from C5 or the fifth cervical segment of my spinal cord. So if the person gives me an injection and I feel the pain, and then after that I'm just moving my muscle a little bit to make the pain a bit easier. So that tells me that my C5 segment of the spinal cord is intact. If I don't feel the pain and if I don't feel difference in muscle movement, so I will suspect that my C5 segment is not intact. Am I clear?
Yes, doctor.
Madam, what do you mean by C5 segment?
Okay, C5 segment means the cervical segment. So you have your spinal cord, right? You have C7, up to C7, you have 7 cervical segments of the spinal cord, you have 12 thoracic segments, 5 lumbar segments. So from the 5th spinal cord segment of the neck, the nerve comes, and that nerve is the one which innervates or which comes to my upper area of the arm. So when I feel pain or when there is any muscle discomfort there, it's basically affecting. So that means it shows me the integrity. That means the spinal, the afferent and efferent is working well. So that reflects back onto my cervical segment. It is not telling that my arm is fine. It is telling me that my spinal cord is fine at that level. Is it clear?
Yes, thank you.
So every area, so when you see the figure here, every part of our body has specific spinal segment nerves which are innervating there. There is no crossing over and all. This also has spinal segments. For example, when we examine a patient with quadriplegia, you know what's quadriplegia?
No.
No? Didn't Dr. Atika explain to you? Quadriplegia, hemiplegia. No, is it? Okay, plegia means paralysis, quadri means floor. When there is paralysis of all the four or of all the limbs, we call it as quadriplegia. So for example, if we have a patient with stroke, they end up having hemiplegia. One half of the body doesn't work. So now I want to see if the spinal reflexes are working well. So I don't put the patient's hand into fire. So what we do is when we examine the patient, I will stroke at the umbilical area. Umbilicus means the belly button area. So when we stroke it with the knee hammer, if we see contractions, then I will know that the T10 segment of the spinal cord is fine. So to see whether the spinal cord segment is fine and is mainly affecting my brain area, so we will do local reflexes like that. So specific areas, like for example, when I said when I give injection here, that is C5. When my little finger is actually T1. So there are certain areas when you go to clinical, you will learn the dermatomes and myotomes specifically. So when the consultant tells you, check whether the T10 is okay or the thoracic 10 segment is okay, you have to check near the umbilicus. So that's where, so there are specific areas for you to check. So this you will learn in the nervous system. But now at this level for you to understand is that one specific area is innervated from one particular spinal nerve, and if it innervates the muscle, we call it as myotome, and innervates the skin, it is called as dermatome. Clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. We have autonomic nervous system. I think you can take a 5-minute break, stretch yourself and come back. We will continue later after the break. Omar, please put on to did Dr. Atika give you the attendance form?
Yes, doctor.
So please put it into the chat and then ask your friends to sign it up. Okay, so just take a 5-minute break. Okay, I'm back. Has everyone signed their attendance?
Yes.
Okay, all signed your attendance. Huh? So can I start?
Can, Dr. Can.
Okay. Okay, so we have done the central nervous system. We just talked about the parts of the central nervous system, where the brain and the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, we looked at the cross section of the spinal cord and we talked about the reflex arc. Then we went to the peripheral nervous system, which consists of cranial nerves, which are 12. But again, I mentioned to you the details of this we will talk further only during the neuroanatomy. And the spinal nerves, which are made up of motor segments, sensory and autonomic signals. They also carry all three, but they will be separate in function even though they are traveling within a spinal nerve. And then we looked at the definitions of dermatome and myotome. So we have seen all this until now. Now I'm going to the autonomic nervous system. So what is the definition of this? Means sensory, motor and sensory neurons that supply the viscera and regulate the internal environment of the body. So it is irrespective of or is involuntary. So this motor and sensory neurons, which will supply the internal body organs to regulate the internal environment of the body, like what somebody mentioned, like the respiration, the cardiac function, the BP, the pulse rate, everything is the autonomic nervous system. We divide that into two types. One is sympathetic and the other one is parasympathetic. Sympathetic is for the fright or flight situations. Whenever there's an emergency, whenever there is a discomfort, whenever there is something wrong with the internal or the external environment, automatically your sympathetic will take action. Whereas your parasympathetic is for homeostasis. Homeostasis means a regulated internal environment of the body. So your heart rate is like 72, your BP is 120/80, you're very calm and quiet. Like if a person is meditating, his parasympathetic system is one which is very higher and in action. If a person is running to catch a bus, his sympathetic system is the one which is overtaking the parasympathetic. So that explains the function. So the autonomic nervous system, which end in the viscera or which send signals to the viscera, are called as visceral motor nerves. So these nerves will conduct impulses which controls the heart. Heart means the heart rate, the force of contraction, lungs, the rate of breathing, the smooth muscles in the blood vessels. We are not aware whether the blood vessels are contracted or relaxed. So it is regulated by your autonomic nervous system. The digestive tract. So morning everybody would have had a coffee. By this time it is digested and going inside. But are we aware of it? No. It is happening all by itself because sympathetic and parasympathetic, it is acting, and your glands. So they are active without conscious input from the brain. So we call them as involuntary nerves. That's why we call them as involuntary. So comes to the sympathetic division. It works automatically to accelerate means increase the heart rate, constrict the blood vessels, and raise the blood pressure. So if you have ever had a fright and afterwards you realize the heart is still beating rapidly, your tense and your palms are sweating, so that means you have experienced the activity of the sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system. So this is why it is called as a nervous system for fright or flight. Flight means not flying. I mean, you want to run away from the situation. That is flight. I would appreciate if everybody can mute their mic. I can hear somebody's mic is not muted. Otherwise, it produces sounds. Okay, so coming to the sympathetic distribution of the autonomic nervous system, they come from the spinal nerves T1 to L2. So in the spinal cord, we talked about the gray matter and white matter. In the gray matter of the spinal cord, from the thoracic segment T1 to the lumbar segment T2, there is an extra horn there. We call it as a lateral horn. From that lateral horn, you have a collection of cell bodies there. They will give rise to the sympathetic nervous system. So this sympathetic nervous system is called as thoracolumbar outflow, meaning it comes from the segments. So automatically we think, oh, sympathetic means it comes away from the brain and spinal cord. No, we have only one brain, we have only one spinal cord. So even your sympathetic and parasympathetic has to come from there, but the function is different. So where does sympathetic come from? It comes from the thoracic segment T1 up to the lumbar segment T2 in the lateral part of the gray matter. So every human being will have a collection of neurons which are specifically for the sympathetic outflow. So that's what it means by telling that the thoracolumbar outflow is the neurons originating in the lateral horn of the 12th thoracic and the first and second lumbar segment. So if you want to see where is the lateral horn, I will show you here. So wait. Can you see my laser pointer or pen here?
Yes.
The red dot there. Okay. Yeah. So if you have the posterior horn receives impulses, the anterior horn gives instructions. But in the thoracic segment up to the L2 lumbar segments, at this red dot area, you have collection of neurons there specifically for the sympathetic functions. They are called as lateral horn. Okay, this is where we usually get the outflow or the instructions for the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so let me continue. So that's why we thoracolumbar outflow. The flow comes from the thorax as well as the lumbar region. Okay. So when it has input or the outflow comes from the sympathetic or it comes from the thoracolumbar regions, we need a relay center to relay the information. To relay means just transmit, like a radio station having a relay center. We need a relay center to transmit the information. For that we have something called as ganglia. So ganglia means it's a relay center which is comprised of cell bodies. Again, I mentioned to you, you only have cell bodies in the brain and spinal cord. They are non-myelinated and they appear gray in color. If you have collection of cell bodies outside the central nervous system for the purpose of relaying information or neuronal information, we call it as a ganglia. So if you look at the image here, you have a lot of vertebra there. On either side of the vertebra, you can see yellow swellings coming in there. So these yellow swellings have collection of cell bodies. So whatever sympathetic information they receive from the thoracolumbar outflow, it will go and relay on to all these ganglia and act accordingly. So how much ganglia do we have? We have cervical 3, thoracic 11, lumbar 4, sacral 4 and coccygeal 1. So this number is not important. For the cervical ganglia, I don't expect you to know the number. You have to know you have chain-like collection of neurons on either side of the spinal cord. What is that for? For relay center for sympathetic information. Yes, you receive the information from the thoraco or the lumbar regions of spinal cord, but they will enter this ganglia, which are collection of cell bodies outside the central nervous system to relay the information. So if you have the collection of all these ganglia in front of the coccyx, we call it as ganglion impar. Am I clear? Am I clear?
Yes.
Okay. What do you mean by the word paravertebral? What is the word para mean?
How?
What does the word para mean?
How?
How?
Yeah.
What does the word pre mean? What does the word post mean?
Pre means before, post
Yes.
after.
After. So para means side. So if you see here, you have the vertebral column in the center, On either side, you have the ganglia like a chain. So that's why we call it as the paravertebral ganglia. So if we see a paravertebral ganglia coming out like this in the spine, on either side of the vertebra, we know they are relay centers for the sympathetic information. Okay. So now we have, how does the sympathetic system communicate through the spinal nerve and to the vertebral ganglia? It communicates through two communicantes or communicants. We call it as white rami communicants, and we also call it as grey rami communicants. Somebody did mention that white means it is myelinated, grey means it is unmyelinated. Yes. So the myelinated preganglionic fibers from spinal nerve to the sympathetic ganglion is called as white rami communicants, meaning from the thoracolumbar outflow, you give out nerve fibers to the ganglion first. So they are called as preganglionic. So these fibers are whitish in color and they are myelinated. Once they enter the ganglion, they will relay the information there. The information gets moderated there, and then they will enter back into the spinal nerve. So when they re-enter back the spinal nerve, they are called as postganglionic fibers. Now these fibers are unmyelinated, so they appear grayish in color. So we call them as grey rami communicants. So the thoracic and lumbar region have both white and grey rami communicants, and the cervical and sacral and coccygeal have only grey rami communicants. So let me explain to you again. So in my thoracic region and lumbar region, I have a group of neurons which will give rise to my sympathetic information. So the moment I have to give rise to my sympathetic information, the information will travel via that spinal nerve, enter the ganglion first. So once it enters the part of it which enters the ganglion before that, we call it as preganglionic fibers. They appear whitish in color and they will called as white communicants. Once it enters the ganglion, it has cell bodies which will moderate the information, and it will make it nicer, and it will consolidate all the information and send it back again into the spinal nerve. But this, when it sends back again, it is not myelinated, so it is called as grey rami communicants. So again, I have a figure here, I think. Or okay, when I talk about the sympathetic pathway, I can show you a video on that. So is it clear until now? Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, mom.
Okay. Okay. So now what happens to the sympathetic pathway? So you can ask me a question. Dr. Rishma, you told me that only from the thoracic region and the lumbar region I will have fibers from sympathetic, but the ganglia is there from my neck until the coccyx. So how do the fibers go? Like for example, if I want to sweat, if there is sweating on my face, it is due to sympathetic fibers. But I don't have any outflow from my cervical vertebra. So only the outflow from the thorax and lumbar region has to go up to my face and my scalp to make it sweat. Sorry, can somebody mute their mic? Okay, so coming to the sympathetic pathway, the cell bodies or the preganglionic neurons will be found in the gray column or the lateral gray column of the spinal cord, extending between T1 and L2. They will enter into the spinal nerve. They will leave the spinal cord via the ventral root. Then the spinal nerve enters the paravertebral sympathetic ganglion. So the preganglionic fibers are whitish in color, and then they will enter into the sympathetic ganglion. Once they enter into the ganglion, they have to synapse for the moderation or for transmitting the impulse. So when they synapse, they will synapse at the same segment, or they will travel up to the cervical region and they will travel lower down to the lumbar region. Once they travel via the ganglion. So when you imagine the ganglion, we have ganglions on either side of the vertebral column and they are all interconnected. So though I get impulses only from the thoracic and lumbar, the fibers can either travel up in the ganglion or low in the ganglion. So that's how one thoracic lumbar outflow is automatically controlling the whole body of the human being. So once it goes to the cervical, it will leave via gray rami communicants to the ventral ramus of the spinal nerve and supply the dermatome or the glands of the body there. So for example, my face is sweating now. I'm sweating a lot. So why? Because of sympathetic fibers innervation. So the sympathetic fibers that makes me sweat on my face comes from my thoracic region, travels via white ramic communicants to the ganglia, travels up to my cervical ganglia. So it will go via the ganglia. It's like a chain. So it easily can travel up until there. And from my cervical ganglia, it will give gray rami communicants to the nerve that innervate my face and causes sweating on my face. So though the outflow is from my thoracolumbar, the ganglia will help in information up or down. Am I clear? Am I clear?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I have a video
Yes,
on this. Once after explanation, I will show you the video. Okay, so now that's the first type. The second type, what it will do, it will come from the thoracolumbar outflow. It will pass through white rami communicants, go to the ganglion. After going to the ganglion, they don't want to go back by gray rami communicants. They will form their own splanchnic nerves and they go to the heart, the lung and the esophagus, or they go to the thoracic area. Okay, so the first type of fibers, it travels by a white, goes to the ganglion, either go up or down or the same segment, travel via gray and supply the dermatome. That is type number 1. Type number 2, which supplies the heart, lung and esophagus, it goes via white, goes to the ganglia, but then leaves from the ganglia directly to the heart, lung and esophageal. So they are called as splanchnic nerves. Splanchnic means viscera or internal organs. The third type is they will go from the spinal nerve through white rami communicants. They will pass through the ganglion. There is no synapsing, meaning there is no moderation of information. There is no transferring the information. From the ganglia, they will take their own splanchnic nerves and they will go innervate the abdominopelvic organs like the heart, the stomach, the liver, the kidneys, the intestines. So they are called as abdominopelvic splanchnic nerves. So the first thing, they synapse and they go via gray and white rami communicants. The second thing, they go synapse, but once they synapse, they don't want to go via gray rami. They directly go to the heart, lung and esophagus. The third type, they go to the paravertebral ganglion, but they just pass through. They never synapse. There is no transfer. There is no information passed there. There is no moderation of the neuronal information. They just take splanchnic nerves. They will go only to the peripheral ganglia near the organ, like the stomach, on the surface of the stomach, or in the celiac plexus or there. And then they will innervate the abdominal and pelvic organs. So they are called as abdominopelvic splanchnic nerves. Am I clear?
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So that means all the nerve enters through the thoracic lumbar region there, is it?
Not as enters. It is outflow.
So whole body, the outflow is in that region only, is it?
Yes, yes. For sympathetic, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the last type is from the lateral column, automatically it just directly goes to the medulla. It never goes to the ganglion at all. So they are directly going to the adrenal medulla. They are considered they are modified sympathetic cells, or they are very important for the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine. So here, can you see the black arrow here where I've put my arrow there? Wait, I will just put my laser pointer. Can you see the laser pointer?
Yes.
Okay, so that laser pointer is the one which is the lateral column, which give in the thoracic and lumbar areas, which usually give rise to the sympathetic outflow. This whole area, I'm sorry, here, this is the lateral area, sorry. I think my laser pointer moved away. Okay, so that is the lateral area of the spinal cord, found only in the thoracic and lumbar segments. They will give rise to the sympathetic information. So then they are traveling through the dotted lines. They are traveling through the white rami communicants. So this one, the blue area, to the paravertebral ganglia on either side of the vertebra. So if they have to go to the abdominal organs, just travel here. They will just, without synapsing, they go to the abdominal organs. Only near the abdominal organs, they will synapse in some ganglion around the aorta. Whereas if they travel directly to the cells of the suprarenal medulla without synapsing anywhere, or they are directly innervating that, they are called as the glands to the fibers to the suprarenal medulla, because they are very important for the secretions of the epinephrine and norepinephrine. So here, if you take into account, so there are 4 ways your sympathetic nervous signals come. Number 1, it comes via white rami communicants to the ganglion synapse, either go up or go down, and then they will enter into the dermatomes. Number 2, they will go to the ganglia, but they will synapse there and then they will take their own path away. That is the heart, lung and esophagus. Number 3, it will go to the ganglia. It will not synapse and go to the abdominopelvic organs. Number 4, it will directly take a pathway. There is no synapsing anyway. Automatically from the thoracolumbar outflow, it goes to the suprarenal medulla. This is very important because we have to act very fast for epinephrine and norepinephrine secretion. So for the immediate stimulus, this is the 4th type. So I have a video on this. Let me try to show you a video on this. Wait, I will stop sharing this. I do not know whether I can show the video, but let me try. This video is in YouTube actually. So
and its main role is to respond to physical stresses on the body. This tutorial follows on from the previous tutorial.
are you still seeing only my PowerPoint slides? I mean, if I
No,
share.
you don't see the PowerPoint also.
Oh, okay. I am trying to show you a video, but I don't know how to share it. It's not getting shared. Wait,
Madam, you try sharing screen and you will come out all the windows that you are, all the tabs that you open. So try clicking the one where the YouTube tab is on.
It's not in YouTube actually. It is. I have downloaded the video, so I will try sharing la. I'm trying
Okay.
sharing. It doesn't come la. It comes desktop. No la. Now no more.
Yeah,
Now
yeah, yeah. It's
is
working.
it? Is a video? Is it?
Yes, yes.
Is
Yeah,
it
means
neuro?
now it's showing the whole computer. Whatever you can see, we can see. The
You
whole
can see. Is
everything.
it?
The link.
Can you
Yeah,
see
yeah.
it?
Yes, doctor.
Just tell me. Can you hear anything? Can you hear anything? Or it's only
No.
okay. So I
No,
will give you.
can't.
Okay, so I will just give you the. Maybe I will talk lah. Uh, so can you hear me talking?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So this is regarding the sympathetic nervous system, the basic configuration. This is available in anatomy zone in YouTube. So this again, this explains the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Okay. So if you see, the sympathetic has the ganglion or the paravertebral ganglion there. So this goes to the, so if you see here, there are smooth muscle ganglia. So the above one, the figure is autonomic. So when it goes to the smooth muscle and it actually synapses in the ganglion and goes to the organ, we call it as autonomic, or this is the usual sympathetic. The one below is the somatic nervous system, where directly without any synapsing in the ganglia, it goes to a skeletal muscle. So the one cigar-like structure is the skeletal muscle. So go up higher. So if you see here, the pink color fibers, before it enters the ganglion, we call it as preganglionic fibers, and the fibers after it leaves the ganglion, we call it as postganglionic fibers. Okay, is it clear? Clear so far?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Yeah? So now what happens? The first type. So from the lateral area, there is the lateral area, or is called as the lateral horn. So the lateral horn is indicated by the red color. It is only present in T1 to L2. So the red fibers, they are traveling from the lateral area through this preganglionic fibers, which are myelinated, to enter the ganglion. So they travel through the ventral horn of the spinal nerve. So that red color indicates the preganglionic fibers. So the green color, it is indicating the sympathetic trunk. So sympathetic trunk are present on either side of the vertebra. You can see how interconnected they are. You have ganglia and a chain of fibers. So this is the vertebra. On either side, you have chain structures on either side. That's why we call them as paravertebral ganglia or sympathetic ganglia. Both are the same. So we usually have these gray rami communicants come out from the, so this cyan blue color is the dorsal root and the red color is actually the ventral root. This blue color indicates the spinal nerve. So now they have put two arrows here. One, they have put purple arrow and the other one is a light pink arrow. The purple arrow is the white rami communicants and the light pink color is the gray rami communicants. White means it is myelinated, gray is non-myelinated. So now these sympathetic fibers are entering through white rami communicants into the ganglia. Because they are myelinated, they appear white in color. And then to the gray ramus, green color, because they are unmyelinated, they will leave through the same spine. spinal nerve and go to the different organs. So this is present only in the thoracic and lumbar area. So this is the outflow in the thoracic and lumbar region. So how do I send signals to my cervical and the lower part of the body? It will be seen in the further one. So this is the sympathetic outflow T1 to L2. But the green color has to go up and the green color has to go down. So they will travel through white rami, go up. Can you see it traveling up? It goes up. Synapses there, and through gray rami communicants, they will supply my eye and the thyroid. So this is type 2. So splanchnic nerves, they have their own nerves. They will go to the gray rami communicants. They will take a direct pathway. They will directly take a pathway. And they go to the cardiorespiratory organs. So the second type is cardiorespiratory organs. The third tab is the synapse near the organ itself. This is wrong. The third type, which they show the heart there, it is wrong. By right, it should go to the gut. That's why I wanted to explain the video by myself. Most of the YouTube, they will give you everything beautifully, but 1 or 2 points will be wrong. So I have 3 types here. The type 1 above onto the left side above image, it is correct. It is going up, traveling through the ganglia and then going to the cervical region. Type 2, which is on to the right side, it is also correct. It will go to the ganglion but take a separate splanchnic nerve that will go to the lung, heart and esophagus. Type 3, which is down, it will go to the ganglia but will not synapse there. Synapse is seen as one V color and then the color changes to green. So it will not synapse in the ganglia. It will go near the organ and synapse in the ganglia near the organ. So that will go to the abdomen and pelvis. The heart there is wrong. Okay, so when you watch this video, go to Anatomy Zone in YouTube. Remember, this third is wrong. This heart should be in the second, and the third goes to the abdominopelvic organs. So this one is the usual, the thoracic and lumbar. So they travel with the spinal nerves. So number 1 is ascending or descending, going to the head area or the leg area. Number 2 is the splanchnic nerves, go to the heart. This one is the splanchnic nerve, post-ganglionic splanchnic nerves, which goes to the heart, lung, and esophagus. Pre-ganglionic splanchnic, they will go and synapse only in the ganglion near the organ, that is the abdominopelvic. And the last one is a travel with spinal nerve, which is the commonest type we see in the thoracic and the lumbar region. Is it clear? Clear so far?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, yeah. So this video is there present in Anatomy Zone. So you can go and see this video in Anatomy Zone. I think another video is also there. Let me try to show you. Got there? Can you see this?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so we already saw the previous video. Number 1, ascent or descent. Number 2, postganglionic splanchnic to the heart and the lung. Number 3, preganglionic splanchnic to the abdominopelvic. Number 4, travel with the spinal nerve, which is very quite normal. So sympathetic, they go to the body wall for ear, or they go to the internal organs. Huh? What do you mean by somatic? Somatic means to the body wall, right, to the skin area. So this is the first example they showed. They showed about the white rami communicants, the gray rami communicants, and then going traveling with the spinal nerve. So the function of this sympathetic is three functions: vasomotor, pilomotor, and pseudomotor. Vasomotor means vaso is vessel, contraction of the vessel. Pilomotor means hair. So a hair means hair will stand up. It supplies the erector pili muscle, which is a smooth muscle. So the moment we see a snake, the peripheral arteries will shrink. So the vasomotor acts. Our hair will stand up because we feel very scared. So that is pilomotor, and pseudo means sweat. So we start sweating more. So that function is called as pseudomotor. So vasoconstricts means constricts the vessel. So pilomotor means it supplies the erector pili muscle, which will pull the hair to stand up, especially when we see with its fight or flight. And pseudomotor means it will increase the secretion from the sweat glands. So this is the function in the skin, the sympathetic system. Now we'll go to the visceral distribution, what we talked about. So this, the red color line indicates the thoracolumbar outflow. It has to go up and it also has to go down. So this is the type we talked about, which goes into the head and neck. So this will also travel the same way to the ganglia below, to the urinary bladder, all the muscles of the smooth muscles of the GIT, and for the secretion of the glands for digestion. So here you see it ascends to the cervical ganglia, and then it will go to the head and neck of the person. So it supplies all the blood vessels of the head and neck also. So T1, T4, they usually supply the organs of the chest area, the lungs, as well as the heart area. So here they enter via gray ramus, they communicate and they take a direct outflow. So in this video, they have explained it correctly. So they come from thoracic outflow, they synapse in the ganglia, and they take a direct way, and then they go to the heart and the lung. This video is correct. The last video was wrong. This point. So this is called as cardiopulmonary splanchnitis. So it is called as postsynaptic sympathetic nerves. So the third one is actually the third one is the abdominopelvic. So the abdominopelvic get outflow passed via the white rami communicants, do not synapse there, go to the ganglia near the organs and go to the abdominal and pelvic organs. So abdominopelvic viscera means they will supply the spleen, liver, the intestines, like that. So you can see the kidneys are there. So they have ganglia. We tell they synapse in a ganglia near the anchor. Near the organs, we have 3 or 4 here near the organs. So they will go synapse these ganglia and then they will supply the abdominopelvic organs. The terms for you to know the celiac pyramicentric is not important. You just have to know the ganglia is near the organ. Okay. I think this is what is important for you. I think that's all. After this, I will teach you in the nervous system. So is it clear so far? Is the video clear to you? Clear, not clear?
I think we will have to go back and then
please
rewatch
go to the YouTube anatomy zone and read again. So, so sympathetic fibers, they come from thoracolumbar, number 1. The first outflow is either they directly go to the thoracolumbar or travel up and down through the cervical ganglion to go to the cervical and the lower regions, and be pilomotor, pseudomotor, and they form vasomotor. So pilomotor means they make the hair stand. Sudomotor means they make the person sweat, and vasomotor means they constrict the vessels. That's the first part. Number two, they will either travel to the paravertebral ganglion, synapse there, and from there they will go and supply the heart and the lung. They are called as cardiopulmonary splanchnic. Number three, they synapse at the level of they do not synapse in the paravertebral ganglia. They travel through ganglia which is nearer to an organ and synapse there and then enter the organ. That is called as the abdominopelvic splanchnic. The last and the fourth one is directly from the spinal cord, from the outflow, they will enter the adrenal medulla without synapsing anywhere in the middle. That is called as the fibers to adrenal medulla. So these are the four types how the sympathetic nervous system innervates or helps in regulating the internal environment of the body. Clear? Can I continue?
Doctor?
Yeah.
Why is the adrenal medulla important? Like, why is it important for it to directly go to the glands?
Because
Like
of the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine.
they're used in pain, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, they're used in all this, like for example, even if a person is going in for a cardiac arrest, immediately to stimulate the heart, we give epinephrine and we usually give these adrenal medulla hormones for the patient. They have an immediate action. They are even in small amounts, they increase the heart rate and the contraction. So they need immediate stimulus. That's the reason. Is it clear? Is it clear? Can I continue?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So please, if you cannot get the videos, just let me know. I can give you the link. But just go to Anatomy Zone la, and then in YouTube it is there. The last part of this lecture is about the parasympathetic division. It's also a part of autonomic nervous system. It works automatically, the same thing, to inhibit or relax the body systems. So the here means it doesn't mean like inhibit. Like if the person is having increased heart rate, you're coming down. They say, hey, if you're having always anxiety, go do meditation. What meditation does? It helps us to regulate the parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve and automatically reduces the heart rate. So when we want to bring our body back to homeostasis, we have the parasympathetic nervous system action. It promotes digestion and other housekeeping function when the body is at rest. So whenever we have sympathetic nervous system overactivity, the function is to fight or flight, increase the blood supply to the organs, run away from the area. It never helps in digestion or something like that. Whereas parasympathetic, it brings the body back to homeostasis. It makes us relax as normally as we are sitting in our lounge and listening to some nice music. That's what is usually the function of parasympathetic. So how does the outflow occur? So we already said the sympathetic outflow is from thoracolumbar regions. Parasympathetic outflow, we call it as craniosacral. So parasympathetic comes via the cranial nerves 3, 7, 9 and 10. We have 12 pairs of cranial nerves, of which 4 nerves carry the parasympathetic fibers. They are the nerves 3, 7, 9 and 10. So the 10th nerve is the vagus nerve. The vagus gets its name from a vagabond. You know what's a vagabond?
No, doctor.
Vagabond means somebody who's just wandering around. So the vagus, it takes origin from the brain. It travels all the way up to the abdomen. So it is a very, very long nerve. So since it travels around like that, we give the name vagus or the vagabond. So up to the abdomen, the parasympathetic is supplied by the 10th cranial nerve. But for the pelvic regions like urinary bladder, for the uterus, we need parasympathetic outflow that comes from S2 S3, S4 segments of the spinal cord. So that we call it as pelvic splanchnic nerves. Okay, so the sympathetic is thoracolumbar outflow, or the outflow comes from the thoracic area, lumbar area. The parasympathetic is craniosacral outflow, comes via 4 cranial nerves and the 3 sacral segments. Why 4 cranial nerves? The most 3 cranial nerves supply up to the face. From up to the abdomen is the 10th cranial nerve. So it stops at the level of the abdomen. So for the pelvic area, for the urinary bladder, for the rectum, for the uterus, all this they will take it from S2, S3, S4, similar to your sympathetic outflow. Am I clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so remember this: sympathetic, thoracolumbar; parasympathetic, craniosacral outflow. So the cranial part of the parasympathetic, I said 3, 7, 9 and 10. 3 now, it's not essential for you to know the names of the nerves now. If you're interested, yes, you can. But I wouldn't test you on this because at this level, I don't think so. We want you to know this. So oculomotor nerve has to supply the muscles of the eyeball, and the 7 and 9 supplies all the glands of the head and neck. So the vagus or 10, it supplies from the neck area up to the thorax and abdomen. So you see it stops at the abdomen. So for the pelvis, for the urinary bladder, the rectum, the reproductive organs and external genitalia, where do we get the parasympathetic? We take from S2, S3, S4. So the cranial nerves stop up to the abdomen. The sacral nerves will start from the pelvis. Will cover the pelvis for the human being. Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So what is the differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic? Sympathetic comes from thoracic and lumbar region. So we call it as thoracolumbar. Parasympathetic is the craniosacral from 3, 7, 9 and 10 and S2 to S4. Sympathetic, the preganglionic fibers are very short, meaning they will leave the spinal cord. They have the cervical ganglia on either side sitting very close to the spinal cord. So immediately they will enter the ganglion. So the preganglionic fibers are very small. Whereas in parasympathetic, they will come out from through the cranial nerve or through the cervical or through the sacral nerves. They will go up to the organ. You will have only ganglia situating on the organs per se. So the preganglionic fibers are very long. So they travel from the brain, go up to the abdomen. There only they will find the ganglia and synapse there. So the preganglionic fibers are very long. Sympathetic fibers, they are sent to the body wall. So they are pilomotor, making the hair stand up. Pseudomotor, sweat, and vasomotor constrict the blood vessels of the skin. Whereas parasympathetic, they do not supply the body wall. They are strictly to the viscera. So sympathetic, it will to the body wall, they are pilomotor, pseudomotor, vasomotor. To the viscera, they will cause constriction of gland secretion. They will reduce the blood supply to the glands and some stuff like that. The parasympathetic, they are specifically restricted to the viscera. So when you stimulate the parasympathetic, the glands will secrete very well. The blood vessels will supply the viscera very well. So that's the function of the parasympathetic. Sympathetic is preparing the body for urgent flight and fright. That's why it does not help in digestion. It does not help in anything. They just make us to run from the place. So we call it as fight, fright and flight, 3F. Whereas parasympathetic, they are more concerned with the normal bodily function. You eat well, you digest well, then the person passes stools well, the person passes urine very well, is in a relaxed state of mind. That is for parasympathetic. So if we ask if a person is sitting, listening to music and then relaxing, the nervous system that acts more is the parasympathetic nervous system. It is not the sympathetic. The same thing if the person sees a snake and runs away, it's the sympathetic nervous system which is acting. So this is just to tell the same difference. I put it in a figure. So sympathetic means dilates the pupil, increase heart rate, blood pressure, increases your breathing, so stress response, and it prevents digestion. whereas parasympathetic constricts the pupil. It will bring down your heart rate, bring down your blood pressure, bring down your respiratory rate. Then, if today somebody gave you, I think Uzaira, he gave a talk on lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is stimulation of your sympathetic nervous system. You're always anxious, you're always awake. So look at it. Your heart rate is increased, your blood pressure is increased. So automatically the person has a high rate to go in for blood pressure. Whereas when you relax, when you sleep, when you're in a very homeostatic state, your heart rate comes down, blood pressure comes down, so you automatically your body functions are quite normal. So that's how lack of sleep leads to blood pressure. A lack of sleep leads to various diseases because of sympathetic nervous system stimulation. We are provided with sympathetic just to alleviate us from danger. Human beings, when we are exposed to danger, to make us run away from that danger, we have to use. But we change our sleep wake cycle. We are anxious all the time. Like for example, watching a video game, playing PUBG, and then you want to win over your friend, always fighting and then guns and shooting. Your sympathetic nervous system are stimulated. So automatically you will have all this rise in heart rate, rise in blood pressure. It is a stress response of your body. Always your body is in a condition of stress. That leads to high diseases. Agree, Auzer? Agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it was a good talk you gave in the beginning so that it's easy for me to explain this to your friends. So clinical points, the last part of the lecture is referred pain. So if the person has a pain felt at the site other than where the cause is situated, that is called as a referred pain. So whenever a patient has a pain in an internal organ, it is actually exhibited as a pain away from the organ. For example, the pain from the pancreas, which is usually present in the stomach or abdominal area, it is felt in the back of the patient. So whenever the patient tells me there's a very low grade pain in the stomach area, but it is more in the back, we would suspect a pancreas. Why does a patient have a referred pain? Let me just give you the mechanism first. So usually the mechanism of is that the spinal cord or the nervous system will perceive the pain coming from the body wall of the same thoracic spinal cord segment. Okay, for example, the person is having a heart attack. Heart attack means lack of blood supply to the heart. So when the person is having lack of blood supply to the heart, it will automatically, the pain is carried by the sympathetic fibers from T1 and T2. They will travel through the same spinal nerve. They have to go to the spinal cord. So when they go to the spinal cord, the brain will think it is not coming from the heart. The brain will think it is coming from the body wall as well. Plus, T1 also supplies the inner part of the arm. So the brain will think, oh, the arm is paining, the chest wall is paining, and the heart is paining. So this is the mechanism of referred pain because the synapse occurs in the same spinal cord segments. So that's why in heart attack pain, the visceral pain is very minimal because from the viscera, the pain is low grade. But the brain thinks it comes from the body wall. So the patient will say, oh, I have pain in my arm and my shoulder on the left side. So as medical students, we should know, oh, the pain from arm and shoulder means the same nerve, through the same nerve only, the sympathetic also travels to the heart. So maybe this patient is having chest pain originating from the heart. So where is the example of referred pain? So if myocardium means heart, myo is muscle, cardiac is heart. So this ischemia means lack of blood supply. So when there is lack of blood supply to the heart, the pain is usually carried by the sympathetic fibers from T1 to T4. So all this pain is felt in the upper chest, left shoulder, left arm, left hand because that body wall is also supplied by T1 to T4. Same thing, the gallbladder and liver pain is usually present at the tip of the scapula. Scapula is behind, it's present at behind because that area is T7, T8. So that body wall is supplied by T7, T8 that also, and the pain is also carried by sympathetic fibers of T7 and T8. Same thing, any pain from the spleen. Spleen is found on the left side. It is referred to the left shoulder. Again T7, T8. and pancreatic pain refers to the back, which is usually T6 or T7 level. So why is this for you? It is not necessary for you to know now, okay, if heart attack, the pain is there, the gallbladder means pain is there for you. At this level, the mechanism is very important. Why the patient has referred pain. So if there is a problem in the internal organ or viscera, the pain fibers are carried by the sympathetic system. They will travel through the same nerve as the spinal nerve. So the central nervous system or the brain and spinal cord will think it is coming from the body wall, and it will start releasing the pain mediators and inflammatory mediators at that area. So automatically the patient will have a sense of pain coming from the body area. So that is called as referred pain. Am I clear? Am I clear?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, sir.
Madam,
Yes, doctor.
madam.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide. I want to ask.
This one.
No, the other one. Yes, this one.
Which one?
No, the other one. Yes, this one.
Yeah,
Number 4. You said the pancreatic pain refers to the back. Okay.
Yes.
So, which part is paining? Where do you feel the pain? The pancreatic part or at the back?
At the back, the patient usually complains of a low-grade pain which is in the stomach area in front, but it refers to the back. Refers means it extends back to the back.
Okay, so the thing is, you feel the pain on the surface of the body, but actually the pain is coming from somewhere
Inside.
else. That's
Yes,
what it means.
yes.
Okay, understood.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So let's go to the nerve paresthesia. So the clinical correlates. Nerve paresthesia, when you are sitting for a long time down the floor, automatically we cut down the blood supply to the nerve. We don't cut down, we reduce the blood supply. So automatically the nerve will behave funny. You will have pins and needle sensation that occurs when one sits too long with legs crossed. So this is because there is lack of blood supply to the particular segment of the nerve, and so that produces funny sensations. Paresthesia means at this area is funny or a different sensation. Anesthesia means anesthesia. A means no. So no sensation is anesthesia. Paresthesia means abnormal sensations, like paranormal activity we say la, same thing, that same para meaning here la. So there is an abnormal pins and needle sensation because the nerve transmission there is very funny because of lack of blood supply. So the moment we get up, we just stretch ourselves, so automatically the blood supply is restored and then that feeling goes away. I think in Malay they say it's kaki ke basa. I don't know. So coming to crushing nerve injury. So crushing nerve injury may damage or kill axons distal to the injury site if the cell bodies survive. I told you the cell bodies are very important for supporting the nerve, and the nerve's connective tissue or myelin sheath is intact. The growing axons will grow and then the nerve is regenerated. A cutting nerve injury, if there is a nerve injury, so we will ask, can we do surgery? Of course, we can do a surgery and we can tie at the ends of an axon. But the transmission or the later, the patient might expect paresthesia. Like for example, even if we touch the patient might have sensation of pain over that particular area because the axon don't grow as they were before the injury. There might be some ganglioma or neuroma formation. So this is very common in when we do amputation. If a patient we cut a part of the limb, we remove the lower part of the limb. So here what happens, the nerve fibers will grow further and they will produce a sensation of phantom limb of the patient. The patient will say, I have a leg, I have toes, I have fingers. They will always have a feeling that they have a leg down there. That's because the nerve grows abnormally at the end of the amputated limb. So a nerve injury is quite difficult to repair, but now they are having microsurgery techniques to repair, but still The repair also we always have to reassure the patient and tell it cannot be as before because we do not know how the axons will grow. Further details on nerve injury I will be giving in my next class in the nervous tissue. Okay, so any doubts in this topic?
Doctor?
Yeah.
As of right now, it's hard to think, but once we revise and go through it again and we have questions, should we message you or email you to ask?
You can message or email, anything can do. I respond to WhatsApp fast.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
yeah. So it's so you just go back. The video is on Anatomy Zone. You can go watch it, and then if you have doubts later, you can ask me. So I will start the next class at around 10:30. Is it okay? Have you all signed your attendance?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, yeah. So just take a half an hour break. I will start my next class at 10:30. So if any doubts, just let me know. I can just clarify your doubts. Just read it and know. So I think only until myology is your mid-course examination this Friday. Did Dr. Atika mention to you?
No.
Oh, it is
No,
until.
she mentioned all topics before the test itself, lah, so maybe this week included.
Oh.
Oh yeah, but she said she still hasn't discussed yet, lah.
Okay, I will let her,
Yeah.
maybe I will just tell her today. We will discuss today and we will let you know until which topic we have because we tried to bring in all the topics before and we tried to put practicals next week, but it didn't happen. So this practicals still have to go online only because they extended the CMCO. So just I will remind her maybe